Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to freedom. Dance tonight together. Here everybody's singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for February 25th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast feed or on the dedicated Open the Voice Gate podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. Click the red box that says sponsor this podcast. You can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation, no obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside your other host, Case Lowe. In case you know, after you really got into Gilmore Girls, I knew that there would be a moment where I would be shown some TV series from like the 2000s that I just completely would not have seen before, and now I've ended up watching about 2 seasons of Gossip Girl. Guys.
Oh, funny. I have Gossip Girl takes.
Okay, yeah, no, it's a wild show.
It's too wild for me. And I say that as somebody very into the Gilmore Girls, very into the One Tree Hill.
Sure, yeah.
Into that sort of thing.
Everwood, things of that nature.
Yeah. Gossip Girl is just...
It's a lot.
It's too extreme. I can't find myself in that universe. It's all the character names are stupid. It's too much of a soap opera. I really, Mackenzie watches that all the time, and I can't get into it. I also think, despite the fact that she's amazing in The Town, I think Blake Lively is just horrendous in that show.
She is awful. Like, that is like my number one big takeaway, other than the subject matter, which is, it is insane that basically so those who do not know Gossip Girl, it takes place among the upper crust of New York socialites in high school, and they're just going out drinking every single night, served at every single bar and establishment. Like, it's wild.
Yeah, I don't get it, because oftentimes there's the complaint that people that are playing high schoolers look like they're 29 or 30, but these are people that are playing high schoolers that are doing the actions of 29 and 30-year-olds, and I find that to be extremely confusing.
Yeah, and then you have the whole aspect of Gossip Girl being this blog, and how that is so it's very much this time period of blogs being a thing, but also no iPhones whatsoever, at least during the first few seasons. And I always find that kind of anachronisms fascinating in TV.
Yeah, and like, look, you won't find me saying a bad word about Kristen Bell typically. What a woman she is. But I find even just the presentation of her is dated, and her voiceovers are annoying, and it's just, I don't know. That is a show that I have had on in my house numerous times over the last few months. I cannot get into it.
Yeah, like, we watch a whole lot of trash in the household, and we're proud of that. But, sometimes, seasons of Housewives are over, and we're waiting for the upload of Deal or No Deal Island. And, sometimes she's like, well, have you ever seen this show, Mike? And I'm just completely, my mind's been blown by Gossip Girl, like 2008, and it's from the same guy from the OC. So I should have seen some of this coming, but I'm still literally sometimes dumbfounded by the plot line.
I have not seen the OC. I would like to, for the sole reason that the shoot job booked Phantom Planet for a show last year. They do the theme song, the California. They do that
Right?
song.
Yes.
And ahead of time, truthfully, we were all like kind of making fun of Phantom Planet, and we're doing the like, oh, I wonder if they're going to sing a song about California, like whatever. And then Phantom Planet showed up. They couldn't have been nicer. They were so grateful to be there, and their set kicked ass. And we all, like, all of my like friends, we all just felt like assholes by the end of it, because they were like one of those bands like that were like, hey, whatever you need us to do, like we'll do this, like what do you need for social media? And we were like, yeah, you're Phantom Planet, like relax. And then just by the end of it, we're like, oh no, these guys are awesome. This was a bad job by us. They were so much fun to be around.
Do you experience within the shoot job sometimes it is those one hit wonder kind of bands that you get like the wild breath of, oh, they could be absolute sweethearts like Phantom Planet, but then you're just like, so and so just had a hit in 2004 and they will not let you forget about that hit?
Well, it's the era more so than it is the hit. Like I always tell people, the two nicest bands that I have ever been around are Shinedown and Papa Roach, because they value radio so much. And like like at my job, like we have a very strong relationship with Shinedown, who does the Second Chance song, the Tell My Mother, Tell My Father I've done the best I can, which is a funny thing to say, but they had massive radio hits last year. They are so grateful to do anything for radio stations, and they are their singer and their guitarist Brennan Zach, they are unequivocally the nicest human beings I have ever been around. And Papa Roach is that same way, where it's like they saw what happened when a song would hit radio for them, and it was last resort for them, and they haven't forgotten that 25 years later. And that's where their audience still is. The people that care about a new Papa Roach song are the same people that are listening to the radio. And so it's the type of band largely that if you had a hit from like 99 to 06, they are the ones that are still like, oh, whatever you need. Like, we'll move heaven and earth to make this happen. Absolutely. Like, let's do something for radio. Whereas, there's one specific band that I won't name, but we were hosting them at a pretty big show a few years ago, a very new band. This was like one of their first times headlining in Chicago, and it was a pretty big show. And they're a new band, one hit single, and the show wasn't sold out. And we kind of gave them like, hey, why don't you come into the station the morning of and sell yourself and hang out with the morning show and do all these things. And we got the like, no, we don't really do that. It's like, well, your show's not sold out, so maybe you should take notes from some other people. And again, that's a little self-righteous of me, but it's way more just the era of band that is always stoked to do something if they had a hit in that specific time frame.
Yeah, and I can completely imagine now you get the bands and the musical acts that now are completely driven by TikTok or social media or streaming, and it's just like, why would they want to do that when all of their basis of media has been like other forms of technology?
And it still matters to some new bands. Like
Sure.
I think, as it just so happened where the last few years there's been a few of my favorite bands that started out as like DIY punk bands that have moved up the ranks incredibly quickly, and they see now where gen pop still lives is radio. So they're like, yes, it's cool that we can draw like 1,000 pitchfork type music nerds in Chicago, but if we're ever going to draw 2,500 or 3,000 or play the Aragon, which is 4,000, like we actually have to we're swimming laps in the same pool over and over again. We have to get to a bigger pool, and that's still where radio lives. So especially like for my job and the bands that I myself interview, a lot of them are so stoked that a radio station wants to do anything with them. Now, I don't have the power to play their songs or anything on the radio, but
sure, yeah,
I could always lend our platform, which is a pretty big digital platform, to them, and they're stoked on it. And the bands that stick on radio, those are the ones that end up having a career. Now, the music industry is so screwed up right now that the definition of career is getting more and more abstract, but typically it's very hard to live as a professional musician without radio hits. And I think the bands that get close to that are kind of bobbing in that direction, they see like, oh, this is the thing that could take us over the hump. And so the bands that want to work hard, the bands that are smart, they get that.
Yeah, no, and I think that also with how much live music is like a backbone and how that's still directly tied into radio promotion and radio conglomerates, it makes a lot of sense of the people that kind of understand that are the ones that are able to go from a big room to a much bigger room, and instead of talking about 700 to 1,000 seats in Tokyo, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, you just the first of many shots on this podcast tonight. Yeah, you can't take time off anymore. You know, you have to live on the road, and that's why I'm so curious. We were talking about festival headliners at work a few days ago, and just, you know, like if you would have asked the pop music industry at the start of last year, even at this time last year, pre-Coachella, they were in a full-blown panic over who is coming next. And it just so happened that Chappell Roan hit organically, and then Sabrina Carpenter, and God love her. I think she's a delightful pop star, but like, they forced Sabrina Carpenter to happen, and it actually happened in a way that normally, like, that amount of
that
sheer
one
force
really felt like out of nowhere and like manufactured in a way that like totally worked.
Well, the funny thing about Sabrina Carpenter is that after she blew up, all these radio stations that I keep tabs on were all posting interviews with her from like 5 years ago when
Well, like
when she was like an opener
World.
on a Jingle Ball, and they were just like, oh, this is, Katy Perry's not going to talk to you, but Sabrina Carpenter will. And now all these radio stations have that interview, but they don't have obviously her now. So those two alone, I think everybody in the pop industry was able to take a collective deep breath and be like, okay, we can survive another year. Like it's gonna, we don't have to call Madonna to headline Lollapalooza. It's gonna be okay. But for it's differentiating between alt and rock and like active rock or hard rock. It's all irrelevant at this point. It's all under one umbrella. But I God love them. They help me pay my bills, but Green Day's not getting any younger, and Blink-182 is not getting any younger, and Fall Out Boy's not getting any younger. But Post Malone with Nirvana is a brand new thing, and I know nothing. Nobody will tell me anything, but they did the SNL thing 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And I think we all were like, oh, so that feels like it's going to be a thing, that Post Malone.
Dave's got more bills to pay,
Dave's got more bills to pay. It's that story is so weird.
Wild.
Foo Fighters were going to be busy in 2025, and then they were just not. It's the weirdest. The way he handled that situation is so odd. It's just strange. But the Post Malone with Nirvana thing was kind of the like, oh, that feels like that's going to headline every festival in 2026. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe they're just having fun, whatever. But I think collectively a bunch of people that I know just took a step back and go, well, the industry won't rally behind new rock bands. They're more focused on this Creed reunion tour that will not stop selling tickets. No. I mean, Creed last year, Creed sold out every single show on their summer tour, and they were playing Shed. So, with a lawn, about 30,000 people, they sold out every single show. And then they came back this year and are now doing even bigger sheds and full-blown stadiums. And I just, I hate to be a hater, but it just makes me sad because there are so many new great bands that nobody wants to rally behind.
Is that because the Rangers won the World Series in 2023? Like, is this the direct corollary to Creed now doing actual stadiums again?
It absolutely helped. That sort of sound is just more in vogue than it has been in about 15 years. Korn did incredibly well last year, and
Korn always does genuinely pretty well.
These Korn people, let me tell you, there's something else. But like Limp Bizkit is weird. They're out on the road, but it's weird. Like they're off in their own little universe, but like even they do okay. They've played some really big venues in the last year. But the Creed thing, and so now they're on tour with Nickelback this summer, and it's just
doubleheader.
I mean, it's an unquestionable smash hit, and I mean, no hate to Nickelback was my first concert. Literally, no hate to those bands, but like, there's also people that didn't have hits in 1999 that are really good, but it's just it's an impossible funnel, to just be the one, have you heard of the band Knocked Loose?
Sounds familiar.
Okay, so they were like the standout heavy band this year, and Knocked Loose is heavy.
Yeah, no, they're. I think I've seen them. Okay, no, that would have been after that. But like they seem like the kind of band that I would see at Scion Rock Fest.
Yeah, very. So their big thing was like
Power Trip, like that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And they did Kimmel this year, and it was awesome. It was like a real triumphant moment. But they're still like, even with all the press, I interviewed them. They did, they were very open to talking to every music publication and everybody that wanted to have a podcast with them. Everybody talked to Knock Loose. They have this big summer tour, this big spring tour, followed by a bigger fall tour. They do Kimmel at the end of the fall tour. And next time they come to Chicago, I don't think they'll be able to graduate to even a small arena. And they feel like the hottest, biggest thing there is in heavy music right now. But it's just, it's an unwinnable battle, and it's an industry issue as well as just, it's people are getting their music from everywhere now, not just MTV2 and the radio. And so the hottest new band in my mind, there's another person out there that likes music to the same degree that I do that's never heard of them. And it's just an endless battle of trying to get discovered. And it's at times a pretty soul-sucking endeavor.
Yeah, it's in a lot of ways, I kind of see like parallels between that and the pro wrestling industry.
I mean, I deal with it on a daily basis
Mhm.
of what once made somebody incredibly popular. Like, the way we measure popularity just has to change. And it's not because of streaming or social media. It's options. It's having another choice. There's never been more choices than ever before. And so mainstream uniformity
Doesn't exist.
No, it's nearly impossible. It's why when I produce the morning show that I work on, I consider the day after the Super Bowl to be one of the biggest shows we do of the entire year, because everybody still watches the Super Bowl. It's one of the only things that everybody still does together. And while there have certainly been benefits of sort of breaking up the monoculture, for the purposes of my job, I miss the monoculture. I would greatly appreciate if we all went back to watching the same 6 TV shows, listening to the same 12 albums, and then we would still have all of this wrestling to watch. But otherwise, my job would be easier if we all had a monoculture again.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not that many moon landing scenarios that it feels like exist anymore with that. Let's get to Dragongate. Like, we kind of went completely on our tangents before we even got to it. It's been
let's Gunther versus Tozawa. Let's talk about it.
Wait, Gunther and Tozawa had a match?
Did you not know this?
No, I'm pretty good about avoiding what happens week in and week out in WWE case.
Oh, as am I, but this one made my radar. Gunther and Tozawa had a match last night. I watched the clip of it on Twitter, X, the everything app.
Mm-hmm. Naturally.
And look, it looked like Tozawa versus Hero from PWG 15 years ago. I mean, it was perfect for what it was. I was so taken aback by just how fucking annoying the announcers are in that company. And that's not a new revelation. I haven't regularly watched any WWE programming since probably 2017, and then 205 Live into 2018 and maybe 2019. But when you break that viewing habit and then you go, like, you dive back into it, I watch the Rumble every year, and it's always just like, Corey Graves is awful at his job. Pat McAfee is one of the most annoying people on the planet. Michael Cole has somehow gotten more robotic as time has gone on. I don't know the other people that are there. They all suck. And even I watched a 90-second clip of Gunther and Tozawa, and I had a headache afterwards. Just the way they're yelling, but then also Michael Cole's not talking like a human. It sounds like he's doing voiceover behind Pat McAfee screaming. Oh my God, did I hate it.
Yeah, I guess like the thing that really with like these like both this WWE and I notice it sometimes, and it's really glaring in AEW. The ones that always get me are the obvious ADR voiceovers on pre-tapes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
yeah.
Excalibur talks like it's clear like he's doing them like in his guest room. Yeah,
the taped show Excalibur commentary is it's something else. Yeah, he does that. He does that whisper voice that a lot of people can't help but do when they're recording in their own home.
But Case, like when we're talking about WWE production and AEW production, we aren't are willing to get into some other issues of presentation as it relates to Dragongate, as Memorial Gate was this week, and it kind of was the exact same thing that we've been seeing from Bayside, almost taken to another degree because of the kind of building that we see that in Wakayama. And I feel like that's kind of the way to get us kicked off this week. Case it's not gonna. It feels like that kind of stuff is just not going to change.
No, I mean the building looked awful. It was distracting. It took me out of the show for the first little bit of it, and it has nothing to do with the in-ring. I still think that it has been very, very good this year. I think the booking, by and large, is still very strong as we kind of close the books on month 2 and in 2025. But I just continue to be absolutely flabbergasted by the production choices or lack thereof that this company is choosing to do right now. And with Memorial Gate and Wakayama in particular, it's such an interesting show to look at this from, because you and I can complain about Gate of Bayside, which we did extensively last month, especially me.
Sure.
I was very bothered by it, but they've only run that building for Gate of Bayside twice. Yes, they did it the third time for Dangerous Gate last year too. But let's just say they've run Gate of Bayside twice. It's looked like that both years. We know how they are choosing to structure and light and produce that building. But Memorial Gate and Wakayama used to be this gorgeous, albeit dark. Sometimes it did look like they were wrestling in a void, but this very, very pretty wrestling venue. I went back and because they're on the network, they're on the Infinity uploads. I went back and just watched a few minutes of Doi and Eita from 2020, and then Shun Skywalker and Kazuma Sakamoto from 2021, because I thought maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it's I'm making something out of nothing here. But no, the venue, those 2 years in particular, looked absolutely phenomenal. And I think this was a show that had a lot of good wrestling on it. I'll tell you right now, my second favorite Dragon Gate match of the year happened on this show. But it's going to be really uncomfortable when I send this show out to some people, some tastemakers that have more pull than I do, and I go, hey, you should really watch this. And they're going to be distracted by a venue that has a few hundred fans in it, and all of those fans are baking under this room lighting that just continues to be such a distraction from the actual promotion.
Yeah, and like the real obvious change is that they don't travel with flight kits anymore. And what we saw in Wakayama in years previous was basically just having light trees lighting the ring, and then you would have basically the venue that we all saw this week essentially. But it would be dark, but at least it doesn't necessarily pull focus. And there were moments that you would see on this show that you would have a lot of pulled focus, and I think that you even have like aspects that I feel like would be a lot more over, that I feel like just the decision to go like, all right, scaling back production wise, and if that's like a ring truck or a different truck and with that, I think that then you are going to look at this as just such an unappetizing kind of thing, like an era that when we like look at Dragon Systems footage and you look at the footage that has gone up of the last 26 years of the company case, and it's just this is like a glaring kind of mistake at this time, and it's not necessarily even like sending it to a tastemakers kind of thing. It's something that I think historically it's going to look really bad in retrospect, making this decision, because it just makes everything feel low rent in a way.
I turned on the show and immediately was pissed off. As soon as I saw the thumbnail when I clicked on the Memorial Gate feed, I knew it was going to take me forever to get into this show. And I'm somebody that has sat through the worst of Gabe Sapolsky production. I am somebody...
The DGUSA show without any lights whatsoever.
Yeah, when Brody Lee did a run and you couldn't see Brody Lee because it was so dark. But you know what? It was dark instead of light, and I think I would rather take the darkness. The bare bones Chikara production in the early days, like name something that doesn't look pretty. I've probably watched it and I've probably tolerated it. The difference
all of IWA Mid-South.
Oh my! What a great poll. You're exactly right. I'm not expecting any sort of production from Ian Rodden, but the difference is that I've never seen nor expected any production from him. With Dragongate, there were times where they've been the best looking wrestling promotion that there is. And now they've scaled back to such a degree that it is a distraction. I fooled myself when I was going back because I haven't seen an attendance published for this show. The Gaiora site normally takes a few days to get the results up, and it's not up yet. There wasn't an attendance published with the results that came out. So whatever, the attendance is irrelevant. This is, to my knowledge, still a sold show.
Yeah,
But
yeah. To my knowledge, that this is still part of one of the conglomerates that owns Gaiora buys the show for their Wakayama affiliate. At least that's what it has been traditionally over the last 12 years.
But the way they used to light this building, the way this show used to look in
They
my
used to have a truss for like the first year.
exactly, and in my head, I was thinking like, man, it's amazing how much they've scaled down Memorial Gate. This used to have a few thousand fans in the building, which is not true because I started going back and looking at the attendances. And even in the mid 2010s, if you want to mark that as the period in which perhaps maybe attendance was being inflated the most, they're still only claiming like 1,100 fans on these shows. It's a bigger show in name than it actually is in attendance. And this is one of those shows that, you know, there's not a ton of chairs on the hard cam, but when you start brawling through the crowd, you go, okay, well, they've got some rows of chairs here, but it is all irrelevant because all you see when you turn on the feed is 3 rows of chairs and a glaring light in the middle of the ring. And I do not understand it. Again, you're right. If this was IWA Mid-South, I wouldn't care because I've never seen a level of production from them, nor do I expect it. But for Dragongate, which is a world-class wrestling promotion that is fighting with All Japan and a DDT that feels revived. And again, I will give Noah credit for now. They are hot. Objectively, I do not trust them. I do not lump them in as a serious contender. Even Kyushu Pro, who is doing huge numbers locally right now, that is Dragongate's competition. And they are falling so far behind in that department. And they're never going to be Wrestle Universe. I doubt they will ever be. Well, I guess at one point they did have an active YouTube channel, but Kyushu Pro is so easy to watch. The distribution factor is one thing, but just visually, oh, this is such an uphill battle. These shows look so bad. I cannot believe they are still doing this.
Yeah, and it is also, like, talking production wise, it's a hard thing to recommend like shows that look this bad. You know, I mean, like the fact of the matter is that in the past, maybe because it was a bought show from that TV network, that they were able to, you know, to have the really nice light truss for a couple of years in that situation. But the fact of the matter is, when you look across the entire year of Dragongate shows to date, how many of them do you think that actually look like an appetizing product right now? Like, out of, I think it's about 15 shows across the first 2 months, it's basically the Corkins and the Sakas, right?
And even Osaka, I didn't think looked as good as it normally does last time. It's Corkin. And that's by default. You know, it's hard to screw that up.
So, like, you as, like, figures that we have whatever position or taste making pull for it, even with the idea now that unless you are paying in yen, you're probably getting this at a better value than you would have had in 2018. It's just like, but in 2018, you'd be like, yeah, no, it's expensive, but it's Dragongate. You know how good it looked. Yeah, like this. For the first 2 months of 2025, more often than not, like, it's with caveats of, yeah, and some buildings, they don't need to have as much there. I feel like production-wise, like, Sambo Hall's fine. Like, Sambo Hall, everyone knows what Sambo Hall is.
But even then, it looks better with the lights off.
It absolutely does. And I just have to wonder, like, within the calculations and within the ledgers, really, is this really the decision that if you're a company like Dragongate, where the reality is that there is no safety net, is this the cut that needed to happen, really? Because it universally, it's been a pan thing, like, at least within people I talk to about the product in 2025.
Did you notice on this show that they only brought one? One entry curtain. Yeah,
that they've done that in a couple buildings, though. Like, that was not a surprise. I remember Memorial Gates with one entry before.
Okay, not to sound like Joe Lanza, that's not my Dragon Gate. My Dragon Gate has 2 entry curtains. Okay, I was so bothered by that. Again, it's just sort of this onslaught, and I'll make the caveat here that it's not something I complain about when they were doing the YouTube uploads, and we don't have the new, Jay tweeted out on Blue Sky earlier today that he had some good news on the tag league that he'd be able to announce soon. I don't know what that is. We don't know what that is by the time we're recording this. But when they're in a hotel conference center, I don't expect these shows to look a certain way. We got an email from a listener. I got an email from a listener. I shared it with you, that went to the Shun Skywalker Problem Dragon homecoming show in Gifu a few weeks ago. And this person who goes to Dragongate in Kobe and Osaka and then happened to go to this show, they were raving. They were raving about this show and how much fun it was and how good the main event was and how captivating Shun is. And they made the point to me that I thought was so interesting. I've never really thought about it like this, but the way we are currently being fed Dragongate, which is Korakuens, Osaka, Kyoto, Kobe, Fukuoka double shot, insert big show here, it is actually the least interesting way to consume the company. And I think the thing that made the YouTube upload so enjoyable, yes, there's just the idea of footage with a capital F, right? Like, we like watching stuff, we like consuming it, that's fun for us. But the thing that was so special was you and I preach on all these podcasts that we guest on about, the Dragongate business model is not packing the Tokyo Dome, although if they could, they would. But it's not that. It's drawing 200 fans in this village and going here and drawing 400 fans because those are the only towns. This is the only time they get wrestling. And we actually got to see that on these YouTube uploads. We actually got to see that when they would go to Kumamoto and put it on the network. And we are missing that right now. So we not only have these shows that look so bleak, but we're not getting the update, like the secondary benefit of here's this homecoming show and here's this homecoming show, and hey, you're going to get a handheld of a rookie having a great match with a veteran on this show. We're losing the spirit of this promotion, and maybe this wouldn't bother me so much if we were also getting those YouTube uploads, but when the only footage that we're getting is what we're getting and it looks this way, it's a real uphill battle.
Yeah, and it's a situation where, like, for as longtime Dragon system watchers, we're used to the loop. Like, we have an expectation of, like, okay, these are the shows. Like, of course, they're going to go to Osaka, they're going to Tokyo, they're going to Kyoto, you list them all off. But it is something where, like, part of that is because of the TV deals, and that's why those shows get chosen. And it leaves out a lot of holes and a lot of just like the spice of the promotion, as you're saying.
I think I said this to you off the air last week. I don't think I said this when we were recording. What I've come away really wanting is I wouldn't trade what we currently have for what I'm going to suggest. I would still rather have full Korakuens, full Kobe's, full Osakas, and deal with whatever else we get. What I wish we had, I think the most desirable way to consume this promotion would be to get the full-length shows that we're getting. Those don't get touched. I want to see the undercard. I want to see the main event. I want to see everything there. But to have a secondary monthly studio show in the same way that Vamonos Amigos used to be formatted, where you would have, Kikuchi in the studio, let's say, and then Yamato's going to join him, and they're going to talk about a match in Gifu and show 8 minutes of a 13-minute match here, and then they're going to go to Dragon Daya's little stick of a village, and they're going to show us a match there, and then we'll get maybe one full main event at the end of that episode from insert house show here. I do think even having some sort of studio show like that would add a level of spice to this promotion that I do think is missing right now.
Yeah, and like you look at what they've put up on the network outside of the show uploads, a lot of that kind of like Open the Beautiful Gate, like the soccer thing, and like other kind of segments. I feel like you could pair those into a studio show pretty easily.
Yeah, and those are cool, but the network is kind of hard to navigate, so I don't want to click on a thing that's going to be Luis Monte playing soccer, and then it's going to be hard to get back, and then I'm going to have to find something else, and it's just a pain in the ass. What I do have here, Mike, I have a list of 8 things that I would do to improve the live event atmosphere for Dragongate. I'll bounce all of these ideas off of you. This is something I've been thinking about just in general, because I went to that AEW TV taping in November, and obviously I've gone to most of the All Outs, and I go to AAW in Chicago here and there. I guess I haven't been in a while. Sorry, Dr. Keith. But I hadn't been to a TV taping for AEW before. And when I went there, I was so shocked at how bad the live event atmosphere was, not even in terms of was this crowd hot or not, which unfortunately, at least in my section, I was surrounded by people that loathed watching wrestling. They were just way more into like the Mercedes Moné championship celebration than they were any of the matches, which was a real bummer. But the fact that like they go to commercial break in AEW and they don't pump music into the venue, and they don't have Lexi Nair out there with a TV, or not with a TV, but with a t-shirt cannon. They don't have AEW trivia on the Jumbotron. Like all of these things that I guess I just thought were givens that you would want to do if you had any sort of TV product with a live crowd.
Yeah,
that you would,
Orange Cassidy cams.
Yeah,
Everyone does a
just
thumbs up.
like,
Easy things.
you
Like
know,
you've been to an NBA game.
this is just I was at the Bulls game on Saturday, and it's arguably too much. Like it is sensory overload. They don't want you to be bored for one single second. But you know what? Every time out, they've got guys on trampolines dunking. They've got the dunking race on the jump. They've always got something. And AEW had none of that, which just blew my mind. Because even like you have to go back to the shoot job for a second. There is so much discussion about when we host a concert. There's so much discussion about what is going to happen in between the bands that is our responsibility of, are we going to have a DJ? Are we going to do this? When are we going to do this thing for the sponsors? And AEW had none of that, which blew me away. Dragongate, obviously not an American TV wrestling company, so it's a different ballgame. But I do feel like maybe I'm just doing the thing where I'm forced to analyze something, thus I'm coming up with analysis. Maybe this isn't an actual thing. I'm just thinking of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like these crowds are taking forever to warm up. If you go back in time to even, let's say, Final Gate, right? Like Final Gate was a cold crowd up
Which
until
is to be
Yamato.
expected.
Yeah, but it was up until Yamato versus Daya. They got hot. Gate of Bayside. A cold crowd up until that Twin Gate match in the main event, Yamato versus Strong Machine J. They were into it. This was a cold crowd up until that main event. Now, you could just say, hey, the main event stuff is over. The rest of it isn't. If you want to make that argument, fine. I do just think there are things that Dragongate could do that would just help the live event experience. And I have a list of 8 things for you, okay?
Okay, is one of them have ulti at every show?
Yes, I'm going to give you a half a point on that because that would tie into one of the things that I would do. I should have thought of that. Number 1 would be lights off and actual lighting. We agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, easily. I
would have the chairs in the front row so much closer to the ring. I don't know if it's a post-COVID thing. I don't know what it is. Everybody is so far away from the ring. Like on this show, it felt like the first row was a mile from the ring. You got to bring everybody up. If that means the venue looks less crowded because you're not taking up as much space, so be it. I don't know. I feel like people are a million miles away from the ring. Is that just a me thing?
I think that's a universal thing within Japan right now. I think that you have like the return to live crowds and like the idea that they space people so far out because of COVID restrictions. And to be frank, if the industry was a lot stronger right now, Case, I don't think people would be that far away from ringside.
Yes, you're exactly right. I would have tighter entrance ways, and this would go for every wrestling company in the world. If you go back, and again, part of this just speaks to the strength of the industry, go back and watch an 80s All Japan match and watch Baba or Jumbo or Tenru or Hanson or Brody. Watch them try to get to the ring. They are walking down a very, very narrow path. And it's just what you should be on people. Like, this is one of those things. I maybe for American companies, it's an insurance thing and they don't want fans that close to the wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's so far away from each other now. You want people on top of wrestlers. That's good. It's good for the environment. It looks good on camera.
Yeah, and I think you look historically when Dragongate had the elevated ramp and they would have like up until, really like 2016, I feel like it's the last time really where you see fans up there. But when you had fans right up to the ramp, it does, even for larger shows, make it feel like a more engaging presence.
I file this not under fantasy booking, but as a production increase, a production upgrade for the next 8 months. Actually, you know what? Let's say 9 months. Let's say for the rest of the year. Opening match, 10-minute time limit, hot fighting special. I want Yamato wrestling Akihiro Sahara one night. I want Don Fuji wrestling Mochizuki Jr. the next night. I want Shun Skywalker wrestling Coach Minoru one night. I want 10-minute lightning matches and the opening match of every show for the rest of the year. That's going to get people in their seats and get people hot from the opening match on.
Yeah, and the shame is, if you want to contrast that with something that happened on Memorial Gate, you had the kind of the trappings of what you could have had, like this quick 10 minutes open, and it was kind of worked in that kind of manner. But yeah, no, I think that, and especially when you think about what makes YouTube like that, I think having a hot fighting opening match is more likely to, whatever conversion there is from the YouTube to Dragongate Network, I don't know if I feel confident saying that it's necessarily high or so, but I'd imagine that you would see an added benefit in there as well.
10-minute time limit. You don't want to beat anybody. They go to a time limit draw, CMLL style. Everybody has fun. Everybody moves on. Number 5, and this is the only other kind of booking thing, I would bring back King of Chop. Don't. If you go back and watch those, the crowd is so into it, and I would do it for a month. I would do a King of Chop, like 2 matches. I would build a 32-man bracket. Whoever's on the roster, maybe Shimazu. I don't know if he's ever coming back, but I would put everybody on this and bring it to every town you run in. And you don't need to do 16 chop battles in one night. Just do 2 here, 2 there, 2 everywhere. King of Chop is just one of those things people like. Dragongate's the only company that does it. King of Chop would improve the live event experience.
Yeah, and you look at the young guys and what Kagetora is putting out in the dojo. We have some heavy hitters there, Case.
Kagetora is going to receive his flowers on this podcast. Let me tell you, we'll wait on that. A few more here. I am so dead serious when I say this. My next suggestion would be Thundersticks, a la Dragongate USA.
I mean, Thundersticks, like, imagine if they gave out Thundersticks in 2021, Case.
I honestly can't believe they didn't. Maybe they just weren't allowed to. That feels like such a giant miss on Japanese wrestling's behalf if they didn't do that and they were allowed to.
Yeah, that makes me wonder if they didn't, because instead you get like the weird New Japan app that was trying to like bring in like crowd noise through the PA.
God, the pandemic sucked. I forgot about that.
God. That's part of my job, and that's part of the role I am keen to inhabit, Cases. I'm the one that remembers these things.
Yeah, no, good pull there. I would so legitimately, if I had any say, you would see in Osaka this weekend and Cork and next week, you would see everybody with Thundersticks, and I would be instructing, I would have Genki Horiguchi be everybody's second. He would never leave the ringside area. He would be telling people to bang the Thundersticks all night long. I got 2 more for you. Number 7, I would have more prefecture-based units. You know, we've seen in Kobe, the Kung Fu gimmick, I think, has run its course. I get why they have it. It's cool. Give me an Osaka unit with Don Fuji at the helm. Give me a Tokyo unit made up of weird guys that only wrestle with each other in Tokyo. Give me a house show unit. Give me, a Northeastern wrestling, a Wate and everything. Give me a unit there. I think it's a really interesting and unexplored concept. I think they've had success with it in Kobe. I'm surprised they haven't done it more places.
Yeah, and you could even have like aspects that a little bit have happened in the past with M2K with the Yokosuka jumpers, so you could be doing stuff within that region as well. Like, you have options there that you could do and make as like a little bit of an attraction. And I feel like, I mean, just think about everyone around Nagoya. Like, there are places within this country that Dragongate has a disproportionate amount of roster members from. That, I mean, it does seem like to me there are sure a lot of people from Gifu. Like maybe maybe you commemorate like the most famous wrestler from Gifu, Stalker Ichikawa, and maybe Problem Dragon becomes Gifu Ichikawa whenever they're in town there. Just something easy like that.
So my big things again, move the chairs closer, make the entryways tighter, turn off those lights, give everybody Thundersticks. And I will end this last suggestion with a question mark. You might be able to, you're a little more worldly than I am, a little more conscious than I am sometimes. Maybe this isn't the good idea that I think it is. I would seriously consider, at least for the televised shows, having a female dance crew that dances with Ulti in the middle of the ring at the start of shows.
I mean, one, the more ulti, the better.
Yeah.
And like this, I just like, you had like Russell 1 had cheerleaders. Like, that's like, Hana Kimura, like Arisa Endo, and Ricky Sakai, where like it was like Cheer One. Like they've had these kinds of things within there. I don't think like dance teams necessarily are like a culturally sensitive thing though, because like the there's aspects of that I think like if you watch like the B League in Japan, they probably have dance teams for like your JBL teams as well.
Yeah,
You know?
I no one hates a free T-shirt, and I'm just saying if you get out there, you do a little dance, you throw a shirt at somebody, they're
They used to
already
give
having.
buttons for like first gong kids.
Yep, exactly. By the way, oh god, let me see if I can find this tweet real quick. So I had a Gong Kid like note, which is a crazy thing to say, but I had a bookmark. Hold on, let me go to.
There was the I'm Miyu Amasaki being the gong kid in Kyoto once that I saw a couple weeks ago.
This there's a JTO kid, something Thunder. Do you know who that is?
Ah, gosh, there's Fire Katsumi.
It's his tag team partner.
Okay, I've seen Fire Kasumi because of GLEAT. Okay,
Let me hold on. What's this? God, now
scroll
I'm
to
gonna.
the bottom of Project Purasso Spirit to see where your 2AW stuff is.
Yeah, what a humiliating endeavor this is looking. Thunder Masami.
Okay, not familiar with them. But
He's a 19-year-old JTO wrestler from Osaka. He debuted last year. He has a tag match on March 2nd with him and the aforementioned Fire, whatever his name was, against Osaka 06 in JTO. I will be watching that. That does sound awesome. He posted on Twitter on February 6th that he was a Gong Kid at an Osaka number 2 show, and there's a photo of him with Shima banging the gong or the ring bell.
I mean that just kind of is a little bit perfect. Speaking of making appearances, this makes a lot of sense. Case when I was doing my pre-show notes, this is just a random aside. Saw the Punch Tominaga is doing Kazuki Harada's 15th anniversary show.
Yeah, that feels like a show I'm gonna skip.
Yeah. I mean, you get a whole lot of the 09 through 2011 washouts on that show.
That is a safe haven for them.
A lot of there's going to be a Genjin Boys reunion at the very least.
Oh boy, again, have fun with that.
Oh yeah, like I'm gonna be watching that. Let's start off with Memorial Gate. We talked about the trappings of it, but we had one big title match there. They opened the Triangle Gate Championships. Paradox versus Z-Brats set up at the shows last month. We have Susumu Hulk and Kakatora, the champion team, going up against Kai Ishi and Yoshiki Kato. And it was a successful defense for Paradox after what I thought was a really hot finish, especially playing off of the Z-Brats interference. And you had the kids that were brought into the ring case during the D-Courage segment. They were going wild for Paradox winning the match. Like, that's one advantage about not having your own light kit and having the overhead lights on. We got to see the kids like fist pump audibly after the first flash that BEB Hulk hit.
I thought this match was absolutely phenomenal, and I'm afraid that I'm on an island. I'm afraid that no one saw in this match what I saw, but this felt like the perfect use of all 6 of these guys. You know, Hulk's body has been through so much, but he continues to be able to pick his spots and do so well. I thought Susumu had a few genuine wrestling genius moments in this match. Kagatora, I tell you what, you know, he will always be defined by the Jimmy's era of his career, and he should. You know, not only the iconic tag team with Susumu, their matches against T-Hawk and Eita in particular, you know, obviously Hulk and Tozawa, you know, some of the best ones they've ever had. His Paradox run is really, really phenomenal. And I thought this was genuinely one of the best Kagatora performances that I have ever seen. Almost simply for the fact that he spent so much of this match with Yoshiki Kato, and when I left this match, I didn't have a ton to say about Kato one way or another, which shows his growth, because I think if this match happens 4 or 5 months prior, I'm going, wow, Kato was able to work like a really high-end trios match, Or if it was happening a year and a half ago, I think you and I would both be like, man, Kato's not ready for this kind of high-end trios match.
Oh, yeah, absolutely
But
not.
being
Yeah.
paired with Kagetora, I mean, Kato was phenomenal, but this was the all-effort Kagetora match from a guy who famously does not try hard at times, and he blew me away in this match. This is my second favorite Dragongate match of the year. I have it at 4.5 stars. I thought the finish was awesome. I thought the crowd brawling was great. I thought the balcony spot was wonderful. This, to me, was a match that hit on every possible degree that it could have.
So, Case, I do not have it at 4.5 stars. I have it at 4.25.
I respect that.
So I don't think you're on an island, is what I'm saying. I don't love it nearly as much as you did, but I think you really hit on something where, at least within the Paradox team, you got to see just amazing aspects of all three of them. Susumu just being so completely giving in the last third of the match, letting himself being completely just dismantled, like getting hit by everything, and then just having an amazing kick out going into it. And then with Kagetora, just the thing that makes Kagetora so much fun when he's engaged like this, and we saw a little bit of this, wildly enough, he was like the one part of high end when he joined high end thing. He had a little bit of pep in his step, and you kind of were like, well, yeah, no, Kagetora's best part of high end, and you're like, yeah, that's high end though. But in this, I had the conversation for us, guys. We're okay. But in this one, he is one of the most fun heaters in a trio, where he just comes in and slaps the shit out of everyone. And that section with Kato, I thought, was really, really strong. The crowd brawling, which they were pretty conservative about throughout the show, I thought like that they pretty much saved it for the main event. They kept on they worked this as the Dragongate trope of, it's going to be an all-out just chaos fest. We're going to be starting brawling, then we're going to get back into the ring a little bit, and then we're going to do like another long crowd brawl, and then we will have the interference to the end. Like, that was the kind of Dragongate Triangle Gate match we had. It was not necessarily the ROH 6-man style. No, you get, this is the kind of the Luchasaurus house style, working with Rudos like that, and I thought it was so effective. And I think that those crowd brawls, like Kai and Susumu going up to the balcony, which was the one other thing about the lighting is that you very clearly saw them fight to the outside, and back of our heads we're like, I bet they're gonna go upstairs. And then the payoff of them going upstairs, just like, all right, there we go, that was what I was hoping for. But it all just comes together in such a satisfying wrapper, where you have one powder shot going to Susumu, and you're like, okay, there's a kick out there, and the powder's being brought up again. You're going like, okay, how's it going to kind of play into this? Is this going to be a Z-Brats misfire, which it ends up being, or is it going to end up paying off for them? And then you see afterwards, like, Shun basically flipping out at Kai about that powder shot, and altogether, you combine it all together. In Case, I'm one of those kids in the third row high-fiving each other. We love this kind of Triangle Gate match.
Well, if you go back over the last month, you had the Korakuen spot where Homare hit Ishin with the powder, and so Ishin counted the wrong pinfall. You go to Kobe, and you had Doi versus Homare, where Minoura accidentally brained Homare with the black box. You had on that same show Homare drilling Kai with a super kick. I'm sorry, not Kai, but drilling Ishin with a super kick when Ishin was trying to help. And then you have the misfire on this show. So there is clearly something happening here with Z-Brats friendly fire and the way that it continues to backfire on them. My favorite spot of the match, because I thought it sort of exemplified 4 guys doing 4 different things exceptionally well, was Kato was in the ring with Kagetora, and they had been in the ring for a long time, and it was just heat on Kagetora, heat on Kagetora, heat on Kagetora. And then he starts to make a comeback. He hits the ropes, and Ishin hits him in the back with a knee. And then Kato goes to hit the ropes on his side to do some offense, and Susumu does the same thing. And it's just Susumu, even though he didn't physically do this, you feel him kind of pointing to his head, pointing to his brain, being like, no, anything you can do, I can do better. I'm the original heel. And after Kato gets hit with that knee, Kagetora just flies across the ring with a flying lariat. That leads to a BB Hulk hot tag, and they go from there. And it was a small little 10-second sequence, but I thought everybody timed everything so well. I thought that was great. It led into this BB Hulk hot tag. And the thing that I will continue to say, because it continues to be true, is these Paradox guys are just over delivering. You expect a certain level of quality from Yamato, and you expect a certain level of quality from Naruki Doi, but this unit is sort of, it's in make or break status with what Kage is doing and what Hulk is doing and what Susumu is doing. Because even since 2022, that Dream Gate match with Kai, Susumu has taken a downturn. He's not the wrestler that he used to be. Now, he can still be great. He was great in this match, but he's not the Susumu Yokosuka that we had in our lives for as long as we did. And I just feel like these guys continue to over deliver and work their asses off. And that has become the difference between high end and Paradox, is just effort. Just, Kagetora really busting his ass, Hulk doing what he can do, Susumu doing what he can do. I am so impressed by this unit, and I was so impressed with this match.
Yeah, and I felt like you accomplished a lot with it and still had the idea that really things are... You come out of this show and things aren't very conclusive for Z-Brats, really. And like, there are two wars that they're fighting right now. Like, they lose to Paradox because of misfire, and Mochizuki Dojo is still standing. And it's such an interesting time for a heel unit that, like, you have this, like you mentioned, all the interference, like this bout of uncertainty around them. And it was one of those things where I was like looking at Kai and his all yellow here, and I'm going like, this has been kind of the status quo for the last few years, and some things do kind of feel really apparent to me. But I think like Yoshiki Kato, like the fact that we don't have, and you brought this up, the fact that he just kind of blended it in really shows. I mean, coming back from his injury and just like the going from basically working just the rookies now, having this kind of main event happen soon after, I think that it's a really good feather in his cap, considering, I mean, how devastating of a knee injury. I mean, the fact that we're still really cased within the first 50 days of this guy being back in the ring.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing about Homare, where it's the most impressive thing about him is that there's not a ton to analyze. He is fitting in a spot where he wasn't guaranteed to fit in. It's the same thing with Homare, and it's why Kato's injury last year was so devastating, because I felt like he was starting to figure out the footwork and the pacing and the timing that he needs to succeed at this level. And to your point, it's not like he's been healthy all that long, but he came back and he didn't miss a beat. He has been a really impressive wrestler since he came back. I expect him to have a huge match at Cork, and obviously this next week. But yeah, just I was unprepared to enjoy that Triangle Gate match the way that it did. And I'm so glad you illuminated that. Not to backtrack, but match starts in the ring, they go into the crowd, they do the first crowd brawl, they come back, and that second crowd brawl is when the match, I perked up, and I was just like, wait a minute, this is really heated, and this crowd is hot for this, and I'm into what they're doing with Kato and Kagetora. This is a really good match, and then the finishing stretch, I mean, we talk all the time about Dragongate matches that we feel like end too quickly, and this I thought they nailed it. I was so impressed and such a huge fan of this match. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has felt like just given the last few weeks and the amount of build that they've actually done towards this for being the Memorial Gate main event. I mean, look at how it basically consumed the Hakata shows on the a couple of weeks ago, Case. Like, they really found a way to make this pay off in such a just satisfying manner in this main event, and it makes it just like one of the more surprising kind of things. Like, we're not like Memorial Gate. I know that you love Doi versus Zeta in 2020, but this is not a show that we expect to see 4.25, arguably 4.5 star matches happen at.
No, again, that's kind of, it goes back to the attendance point I was trying to make earlier. I don't know if I articulated myself well, but it's always been a show that's been presented as a bigger deal than it actually is because of the way that venue looks, when realistically, I mean, it's much smaller than a Cork, and, best case scenario, if you're really selling a lot of tickets, it's like the size of an Osaka #2, and it hasn't been that the last few years. I think they recognize that. I don't think they're trying to do that. Again, it was, a middle of the road Triangle Gate defense on this show. It's not like it was anything crazy, and of course, the attendance certainly doesn't reflect that, but it felt like a big enough match to where I was perfectly content with it by the time it was done. I was just very impressed by this entire thing.
And then you had the semi-main event building up the March 1st, first day of 2 nights in Osaka, leading on to the Open the Dream Gate title match, Yamato versus KZ. they've been having them in basically preamble matches consistently since Corkin. And in this one, you had KZ team with his almost at this point like his best partner. It does kind of feel like that this is the hand that's kind of dealt with him, but it's him and UT versus Yamato and Hyo, who kind of gets put into this role when you don't have other members of Paradox around. But after weeks of KZ getting the upper hand, Yamato catches KZ out with a Frankensteiner the Almighty. You have a big Dreamgate promo to finish this off this segment. And they've really, I think when you've like looked at like whatever we look at now this March Osaka weekend, at least for that March 1st show with the Dreamgate title match, they've been hitting the right beats, I feel like, for that kind of match on this show. But now we know these aren't Champion Gate shows, so it's kind of, you're building this up for the first night thing with the second night all being Rey De Parejas. It does feel, though, at least coming out of this, that the Dreamgate match feels a little bit more in question than one usually would for a March Osaka number 2 Dreamgate match case.
Yeah, and you'll have the written review of that March 1st show. I will be taking the March 2nd show because I can watch that one live, and that's just easier for me. So I'll do the Rey De Parejas opening. You'll have the written review for that Dreamgate match. It's funny. Two thoughts on this match. One, I got annoyed when it started because I was like, God, another KZ UT tag. I really wish they would have given us like a 4-on-4 Vibes versus Paradox match. I just feel like I've seen so much of this. And then I looked at I went to Gaiora, the website. I was like, who's in Natural Vibes? It's like, oh wait, it's Shimazu, who again don't have any updates there. It's Flamita, who's not in the country, and it's Strong Machine J, who has a hurt shoulder and hasn't been seen or heard from in a month. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, they're gonna keep on running these KZ UT tags. They have no other choice. So they've been enjoyable. But I was like, man, I feel like this should be more heated. I feel like I should be getting another type of match, but I will not be getting that. The thing with the KZ Yamato build, it's a little tough for me to articulate. It's a different build than Yamato versus Ishin was, or Yamato versus Dio was, or Yamato versus Strong Machine J was. I know what I'm getting with Yamato versus KZ. I know what the result's going to be, or at least I think I do. Yamato should kill him. I mean, he should absolutely murder him in Osaka. I hope to God that happens. But the end result is irrelevant. I know I'm going to get a great match. I know KZ is capable of being in that position. What was so interesting about really even Kakuta and then Isha, Dio, Strong Machine J was I wasn't sure they had it in them to headline a big show. And then, by way of Yamato, they've all proven me wrong, and they've all raised their profile as such. KZ doesn't have to do that. And if KZ's going to win the Dreamgate belt, I know he won the Bravegate belt, in Osaka. No, that was Tozawa in 2015. He actually beat KZ. So he doesn't even have like a real emotional tie to this building. They're going to give KZ the Dreamgate belt. It's not going to be an Osaka number 2. And it's not going to be to end this Yamato title run. It's not happening. Again, I hope Yamato fucking chokes the life out of him in Osaka. That would be the most entertaining result possible. I don't know what's going to happen, but KZ's not going to win. Thus, I'm a little hands-off with this build. I'm not super invested in it, but they're hitting the right beats. On the surface, I think they're doing everything right.
Yeah, I think that with how consistently KZ has had his number, and especially making that the impact has been kind of now KZ's bullet in the chamber to take out Yamato, you've already done what you needed to do to kind of get that across, I feel like, in the pre-matches. In this one, really, you just have Yamato kind of claw back so you could have not necessarily a conclusive finish, but you could also do that head-to-head promo afterwards. That was kind of my attitude for that. The match itself was fun. Hyo basically was just kind of there, and it was more excited about showing off his nail polish after the match, but I mean that's just kind of where Hyo's at right now. But he's just Hyo's just being Hyo at this point. My bigger fear is that I hope he doesn't get so high off his supply he decides to go join Uptown. But that's just me being facetious.
No, I don't. Well, I guess I don't see that happening, but
I don't either. I was just
but I hadn't thought about it, but it's.
I imagine he's going to be on like the debut show.
Yeah, I can't say like, oh, you're crazy. That'll never happen.
Yeah. But I mean, when you look at in like the auspices of the match, and really where Hyo right now is in his position in the promotion, he's just so off on his own, doing his own thing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. He's just kind of there, and it's just like, oh wait, we're now kind of waiting for his run with Kuroshio Tokyo Japan and Rey De Parejas before we can anticipate anything really happening. He was here because Doi did not work the show.
Yeah, so that's a good point. You can kick the can down the road at least for another month of Hyo not having to be in a unit. That'll be 5 months since the end of Big Hug by the time we're done with Rey De Parejas. Monte, same boat. You know, I feel very strongly that Monte should be in Natural Vibes, but I don't think they're going to break up Monte and Hyo. You know, as I've said on this show many times, those guys travel the country together. There's a reason they've always been in the same unit. They are as tight as can be outside the ring. Hyo has essentially helped Monte move his life to Japan. I said months before either of them turned babyface, when Monte turns, Hyo will turn with him. I was right about that. I just, even though, you know, now would be the time to split them up, I don't see them getting split up. I don't know what there is for them to do, and it does kind of feel like a time where you would say, okay, Monte, go do the N1 again. Hyo, do your thing with Jiro, and we'll circle back here and figure out what's going on. What'll be interesting is with Kakuta doing Champions Carnival, if one of them takes over some Decourage duty. I guess we'll have to see if that happens.
But you also have still Tanaka around for that during that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess Decourage will be back to a 4-person unit here next week, and then a 3-person unit for the month of April when Kakuta's gone. But
and then a 3-person unit when Tanaka's in the UK.
When does he? Do you all know off the top of your head when he goes to the UK?
I know it's in May.
Okay, it's probably after Dead or Alive, maybe after that Korakuen.
I'd assume so. That's usually when they send them out.
And then Junior was back before World last year, right?
Or like right afterwards.
No, he was in the Dragongate match at World.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So I would imagine he's on the same exact schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Junior went to the UK a little bit earlier. God,
yeah.
I would hate it if Tanaka wasn't on World.
I don't get the impression that it's going to be longer than Junior's trip, but that's just vibes.
That was a nice little. It was nice to not have a year-long excursion. Just go away for 2 months, come back, win some matches. That's all. And that's all Tanaka needs. You know, he's ready. He's got the talent. He needs to lose the fucking baggy jeans. That is the worst. That is the worst gear in Dragongate history. He doesn't even wear it to wrestle, and it is still so off-putting.
Yeah, and like the shame is like just jumping around for a second.
Let's talk about Mate versus Tanaka. Obviously, I want to go back and talk Mochizuki Dojo, but we're here, so let's talk about this.
I love this match. I thought that this was kind of great. I was not Notebook. I was 3 3/4 on it. But this really felt like you got to see other sides of Tanaka you do not necessarily see, especially with Monte just kind of working him over to start off with. And then it just really kind of felt like that these are two guys that end up having really strong chemistry together, Case. And with that, you kind of had everything flow so well that like when the Volta finale happened to win it for Luis Monte, I was like, no, this just felt like a great match. And I bought into Tanaka's near fall. And I was like, you know what? This kind of rocked a lot.
Yeah, it was extremely fun. It kind of falls into that territory of what would a Dragongate US TV match look like. And it was in the same way as Doi versus Homare.
Absolutely, from the night before.
I guess that was the night before. I was thinking that was last week and we talked about it, but we didn't. Yeah, Doi versus Homare was a throwback to territory Doi from the Dragongate USA days. It was another just glimpse into like, God, this guy really is an all-time great. You know, he could just do so many different things. And Monte versus Tanaka was sort of the updated cruiserweight division influenced version of that. And thus a way different match, but still sort of had that same tone. And you're right. I mean, look, Tanaka's unbelievably good. I still think he is so underrated by the wrestling media at large. And Monte, forget what has happened to his charisma that I think has sadly continued to vanquish. Forget what has happened with him in the booking. He's still a top 50 wrestler in the world. You know, he was my 50th best wrestler in the world last year, and he certainly has not shown signs of slowing down in 2025. So this was a very, very fun match.
Yeah, and especially after an undercard where a lot of stuff kind of just happened and people stopped by. It was nice to kind of have that, to have some more teeth to bite into. And going with that, we talked about one part of Z-Brats. The other part that has been kind of maligned by Mochizuki Dojo, Yoshiki Kato gets a step away from that battle in the Dragongate match. That means that in this one, you have Masaki Mochizuki, Ryu Fuda, Daiki Yanagiuchi, and Akihiro Sahara versus Shun Skywalker, Jason Lee, Kota Minoura, and Hamare in another really fun Mochizuki Dojo match where I think we just have to give him the award now. Akihiro Sahara is the absolute boy at this point. Just and another strong series of performances from him. We got a Gucci rocket out of nowhere, which I absolutely love. Just a good time 8-man tag here.
So this is, I think, all of your feelings about Mate versus Tanaka are my feelings on this match, where I went 3 3/4 with it. I went 3 3/4 on the Gold Class versus Mochizuki Dojo match from the night before in Kobe as well.
Yep. Nope. That was my match of the night.
Oh God! Oh my God! I mean, these matches just hit such a chord with me, where, like, when they announced Mochizuki Dojo was coming back together, I was thinking about this yesterday as I was taking my dog for a walk. But it's like, I was so into Mochizuki Dojo when it was Skywalker, Minoru Yoshioka, Okuda for a minute, etc. That first incarnation, it was effective, it was cool, it was Mochizuki doing something important. Like the whole thing just worked. And I really thought when it was Fuda and Daiki chasing Mochizuki and wanting, I was just like, oh man, they kind of come across like losers here. And I guess on one hand, it's good that Masaki Mochizuki is going to do something relevant. He's not just going to do touch football tags in 2025. That's like a nice thing. But man, I don't know if this is what I wanted. And they added Sahara. And again, I was like, well, I like that he's in a unit. He'll be on, pretty much every show now. But again, I don't know if this is, and all of that is out the window. Mochizuki Dojo 2.0 kicks ass. These guys are so good, meaning Mochizuki, Yanagiuchi, and Sahara. And Ryo Fuda is there. I won't harp on it. It's just, he is clearly not on the level of his contemporaries in Yanagiuchi and Sahara. But the Akihiro Sahara thing is the jarring thing to me. The way that he has progressed, and it goes to show, and this should be obvious, but it's just not in 2025, just the power of repetition and the power of actually wrestling, how good you can become so quickly. And Mike, I haven't watched the GLEAT show from Korakuen. You have, and you sent me this note, and I'll just compare the two. When Takuma Fujiwara debuted, everybody was blown away by him. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw him being that good that quickly. And it coincided with the YouTube uploads beginning. And so we were not only seeing him on all the TV stops, but all of a sudden it was, Fujiwara versus Diamante on that house show that blew people away. They had to do it in Cork, and it was so good. It was all these little things with him. And as we approach now what will be 3 years since he left for Mexico in June, AAA TV runs so sparingly. He's not even on all AAA TV. He rarely works Mexican indies anymore. I never see his name pop up. And he works, GLEAT shows here and there. And Mike, how did Takuma look on that Korakuen show?
Well, he was a botch machine, and especially towards the latter moments of the match. Luckily, I mean, he hit the 630, which I guess that's what you really want out of it. But who was the person who really kind of came away like most impressed out of that match?
Who?
Junji.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's okay. That's good. But
yeah, he looks a lot better than Takuma Fujiwara. But no, I come out of me being the one person who keeps up with GLEAT with the conclusion of what Takuma Fujiwara needs to do is stop working at AAA and say, hey, Shima, I'll dedicate my life to you for 6 months.
But even then, they don't run it. It wouldn't matter because he would have to work not only every GLEAT show, but he'd have to work every JTO show, and he'd have to get on DDT. He'd have to supplement those reps because the thing is, he's not getting the reps where he's working. In Sahara, who sadly does not have a cage match profile, I certainly wish that would change. Sahara's on pretty much every show now. And you see it. And the difference is that Fujiwara is so much more naturally talented than Akihiro Sahara is. Fujiwara can probably do 100 things more impressively than Sahara can in his sleep just because of the athlete that he is. But you see the fact that Fujiwara, since June of 2022, has
just like
not
sunk like a brick.
Yeah, he's not wrestled consistently. And you look at Sahara, who's really only been wrestling consistently since like November. And the leaps that he has made is unbelievable because now Sahara, what we're seeing from him that I find to be so impressive is that he's having different types of matches while still being himself. What he does with Homare is different than what he does with Junior, which is different than what he does with Kondo. And we're starting to see him just really figure it out really quickly in real time. And I would say it's unfair to compare him and Homare in a sort of head-on way, because what they're doing with them is so drastically different. Homare is purposefully being protected, and he's being used in a way that I find to be incredibly interesting and engaging, because I do think one day they'll just take the training wheels off and let him go. But with Sahara, those wheels are off, and he is out of control in the best way possible. And for me, he is now one of the most exciting wrestlers on this roster.
And, just to further drill down the Sahara versus Fujiwara point case. So Sahara, since November, since it's not going to be easy to like look up all the stuff since he has a profile, but I would estimate he's probably had somewhere between 35 and 50 matches. If you include stuff not on TV, just with the way that Dragongate works, he's been basically on like 4 out of every 5 shows Dragongate's done. Essentially, they only took like 10 days off this year, but they've been running like 4 or 5 shows a week since he's been there. So I think 30 to 40 matches for Sahara is completely realistic expectation. Case, we've basically seen about 12 of those. He's been on TV constantly. Think about like how many Takuma matches you've seen since he's left the Dragon system or since he went to Mexico.
Yeah, really since he left the Dragon system, which would have been May or June of 2023, because, he and Kento worked a ton when they first got to Mexico, but really since they left Dragongate, they don't. I have people asking about them all the time of like, I don't understand what happened. I'm like, yeah, I don't either. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, and it's like clear regression and talent just completely going away for him with that. But Sahara, though, the instincts and like the snap that he's able to work with is just a lot of fun.
Nah, it's awesome. Daiki Yanagiuchi continues to be awesome. I really would like to see Yanagiuchi and Jason Lee in a singles match. Their chemistry sort of jumped out to me here. I think they come across to me like-minded wrestlers. They have that offense that is similar to me. And thus it looks really good when they do stuff to one another. I really like this new move that Yanagiuchi's got. He's on the apron and he does sort of the slingshot into the ring. But then
the slingshot senton.
Yeah, that looks awesome. I've never really seen anybody do that before.
Yeah, no, I think that looks great for him. And it's just like the more that we see and the more that he has really stepped up to be what I think is one of the 30 best wrestlers under the age of 30 at this point.
Real quick, the other, because I don't want to spend time on Kobe because nobody's going to watch that show. I put this on Twitter, but the finish of the Gold Class Mochizuki Dojo match where Yanagiuchi went for a standing Meteora on Kame and he turned it into a jackknife. Unbelievable. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, a bunch of good finishes on that show, like the Bakatare from Doi against Homare. Perfect.
That's awesome. That match was so much fun. If you haven't seen Doi versus Homare or the Mochizuki Dojo Gold Class match from Kobe, go watch that. You don't need to watch anything else. The main event I thought was kind of lame, but those 2 matches are worth your time.
Yeah, that main event kind of turned into Paradox versus KZ versus Z-Brats. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah, I didn't like the format of that match. I understood what they were trying to do, but it didn't land.
Elsewhere on Memorial Gate, we won't take too much long on this. Horiguchi, Kanda, and Sachioko Boy versus Benkei and Junior and Ho-Ho Loom. It wasn't really a touch football match. It just kind of was by the numbers. It was the Masakari for Benkei getting the win.
Very, very fun for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was, fun by the numbers. It was good to see Ho-Ho on a major show, like that's fun to see. And then we had our opener, Madoka Kakuta and Dragon Dai of D-Courage versus Rita and Jackie Kamei of Gold Class. It was a stuffed pile driver on Rita to win this opener. In case this is the kind of opener you want to have on your 8 rules to a better Dragon Gate, right?
I did not realize that Kakuta and Rita had the chemistry they did. That is now my top draft pick until otherwise noted for desired King of Gate matchups in 2025.
It just was like, he was such a fun change of pace guy in this match. You had Daya working with Rita and Kamei at the pace you expect them, and then Kakuta just comes out of nowhere with hip attacks. And it was fantastic. I was 3.5. I loved it.
I was too. It was just, Kakuta, I don't need him to turn heel. I don't know what that gets you at this current point in time. He's just better when he's meaner, though. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean heel, but just the fact that he was as reckless as he was with Rita, or at least seemingly reckless, it was big hit. I very much enjoyed that.
the hip attack to break up the pen out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
Joe Gagne's got that on his Twitter, and if you have not seen that, it is jarring. I can't believe that didn't go more places. That kind of feels like the gift that people would have really enjoyed.
Yeah, no, that was a really fun opener on a better than usual Memorial Gate show, production notwithstanding.
Yeah, I said this when the card came out. I was kind of surprised at how good the card was, because we've seen, over the last few years, I mean, they've really punted on this show a few times. There was the year in 2020, it was Jason and Estrella versus Dai and Yoshioka, and it was announced like 3 days before the show, and it
was Dying Days, a masquerade.
I felt so bad for them. It was just such a cold main event. They were fed to the wolves. That was the show that had the 5-way rookie match. That was this is incredible. This goes to show just how long Ryofuda's been here now. It was Takuma Fujiwara versus Shoya Sato versus Ishin Ihashi versus Riki Ihashi versus Ryofuda in a 5-way number 1 contendership match for the Brave Gate that Fujiwara won, and that led to the Daya challenge at a Champion Gate in Osaka. So that is how long Ryofuda's been in the system. I remember really liking that match, but again, this has been a show that they've largely punted. It's not a show that I'm going to write about. I'm not going to do a written review for this show, but it was a very fun show, between the opening match and then Monte versus Tanaka, which was just a short little fun thing, and then Mochizuki Dojo versus
Z-Brats.
Thank you. Sorry, I want to call him Hat Blanky. I knew that wasn't it. Mochizuki Dojo
They were
versus
yellow,
Z-Brats.
confusing.
Yeah, and then, again, the main event to me was as good as everything I've seen in Dragongate this year, with the exception of Daya versus Doi from the first Korakuen show. Other than that, it's better than everything I've seen.
Yeah, it was a really fun Memorial Gate card, but Dragon Gate's not going to wait for us to rest case. We have a huge 7 days coming up. We have the cards for both of the Osaka Ideon 2 shows, as well as the March 4th Korakuen. Let's talk about and preview those, case. I'll run down 3-1 and get your thoughts on them before going down 3-2 in Korakuen.
Sounds good to me.
All right, we are opening not with Mochizuki Dojo. It's Masaki Mochizuki and Don Fuji, along with Problem Dragon versus Gold Class, Benkei, Rita, and Jackie Kamei. Match 2, Monte and Kanda versus Asumu, Yokosuka and Hyo. Match 3, Open the Warai Gate, Champion Takashi Yoshida versus Kunishibo Kamen. Match 4, we get Paradox, BB Hulk, Kagatora Naruki Doi versus Kotomo Nora, Yoshiki Kato, and Hamare. Match 5 is Yuki Yoshioka's return match. It is all of D Courage. Yuki Yoshioka, Dragon Daya, Madoka Kakuta, and Ryoya Tanaka versus Shun Skywalker, Kai, Jason Lee, and Ishin. And our main event, of course, is the Open the Dream Gate title match. Yamato defending against KZ.
It's a 2-match show. It's the top 2. I'm sure, Paradox versus Z-Brats there in match number 4 with Hamare and Doi there. That could be something. But this is all about Yoshioka returning, which should be excellent. And then Yamato versus KZ, which have they ever had a Dreamgate match?
I think weirdly or not, they have not. They would have if KZ beat Shun Skywalker.
Yeah.
But they did not that year.
Let me double check that. I guess I haven't gone through their singles resume together. Let me just do that.
I know it's
really
heavily
quickly.
One-sided. That's for sure.
That is true. Okay, so they've only had 5 singles matches. I would have thought they had more. So Yamato versus MCKZ in 2007. Yamato won that, not televised. Yamato versus KZ on a Summer Adventure Tag League show in 2015, not televised. Yamato versus KZ, and again, Yamato's won all of these so far, on a non-televised King of Gate show in 2016. And then Yamato versus KZ and Korakuen, King of Gate 2018. That was the show after the OWE split. That was the main event. Right. That was very good. I remember that, and that was an emotional show. And then King of Gate 2020, the slog that was, again, Yamato. So Yamato's 5-0. I didn't realize they hadn't had a singles match in 5 years, and I obviously remember nothing about the 2020 match. So the last time these guys had a real singles match was the day after the OWE split.
Yeah, and I feel like that card was such a aftershock of the split that really, when you look at that show, I remember that match being like, oh yeah, no, that was the main event and that was pretty good. But the overwhelming tidings of that match was, oh, this is what Dragongate is now afterwards, and you're having Kai and what's his
Hiroshi
name?
Yamato.
Hiroshi Yamato showing up. Like, those were like my takeaways from that. So for me, in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like we have almost like a mind eraser going all the way back to that 2016 match, which was not televised.
No, I owe them an apology, because in my head, the entire time I've been watching the build to this, I was like, yeah, we've seen it. I know what this is. Again, not bad, but just it didn't have the curiosity factor that Dai and Strong Machine J and Ishin had. But I didn't realize it had been really 7 years since a proper singles match. And think about the growth that KZ has had at that time. And we're talking about KZ at that point. That's still Tribe Vanguard. That's a Tribe Vanguard versus Tribe Vanguard matchup, right? No, Natural Vibes is on this show. I'm looking at this now. This is
that had to be after the Mochizuki match. So that was
okay. Yeah. So you're right. So this is like the second month of Natural Vibes on this show. By the way, this is third from the top. So it was Yamato versus KZ, Shingo versus Yoshino, which was okay for their standards. It was great, but not as good as their other matches. Third from the top, Genki Horiguchi, Punch Tamanaga, Susumu Yokosuka, and Brother Yashi versus Dragon Kid, Gamma, Kaito Ishida, and Problem Dragon.
Oh, is that late era Overgeneration you're talking to me about, Case?
Late era Overgeneration goes 9-0-1 with a no contest finish.
Oh boy.
I'm telling you, I want to hammer this into people's heads. Shingo and Yoshino are on this card, and I know that's cool, but this promotion sucked in 2017 and for the first part of 2018. Really up until World. Oh my God, that sounds awful.
Case, why is it that whenever we have these situations I come in and pitch it, I always have to have the Yoshida Gate matches?
So let me explain to the people what happened. Is that I have a thing I have to go to on Friday, thus will get home later than I want to. Thus cannot watch the Saturday show live, which was upsetting to me because I'm going to try to be unspoiled for Yamato versus KZ. Obviously, I've written about all of these Yamato Dreamgate defenses during this reign, and I'm really enjoying doing so. But I kind of let that go, and I was like, it's just going to be easier for me if I review the second Osaka show. Let me ask Mike if he's okay reviewing the first one. And then I really sat down and looked at the cards, and I thought, man, Mike's going to think I'm an asshole. Like, I'm giving him the worst Osaka show by far, and he's got a Yoshida match on that show. It's not personal. If I didn't have the thing on Friday, I would review the Saturday show. It's just the way the cards fell.
Hey, my lovely wife has a bridal brunch, so I will probably be able to get this review done before March 2nd. So it works out really well.
The nice thing is with the Yoshida matches is that it's a quick review. Obviously, it takes years off of your life watching it, but you don't have to write a lot about it.
Yeah, no, that's the one that if you're watching it on your phone, you go and you make sure you have like the small picture-in-picture window as you're like scrolling through whatever social media of choice, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. This is kind of a thin March 1st show. Let's get into the opening night of Rey De Parejas, the next night in Osaka, Edion Arena. Number 2, we have a Block B match. Strong Machine J makes his return from repairs, teaming with KZ against Masaki Mochizuki and the absolute boy, Akihiro Sahara. Case, you get the Mike Spear special, UT versus Kai, as a special singles match. Match 3, a Block A match. You're open the Twin Gate champions, Kota Minoura and Jason Lee, versus Ishin and Yoshiki Kato. We're getting that Z-Brats match out of the way and in open in front of a camera. Match 4, we have a lot of paradox. Yamato and Susumu Yokosuka, along with veteran roster members Don Fuji and Genki Horiguchi, versus Benkei, Madoka Kakuta, Ryoya Tanaka, and Luis Monte. These are the kind of matchups you get during Rey De Parejas season. Match 5, we are getting Hyo and Kuroshio Tokyo, Japan versus Shun and Hamare, and your main event, the reuniting of the original D Courage, Yuki Yoshioka and Dragon Daya versus Jackie Kamei and Rita.
So this show looks awesome. I'm very sorry that I'm reviewing this one and not you, but this show has a ton of stuff that looks fantastic.
Yeah, can we at least move UT versus Kai to that March 1st show?
I think that show would greatly benefit from that match.
Yeah, like that is like such an interesting special singles match considering the kind of matches that these two had as partners in this building.
Keep an eye on, obviously, the Z-Brats versus Z-Brats match, Minoru and Lee versus Ishin and Kato. That feels like it's going to make the dead or alive plans a lot clearer after that match, which I'm sure will be a no contest or a time limit draw.
Yeah. I mean, that is not going to be a clean win one way or the other. How do you feel about them opening with Strong Machine J and KZ and Mochizuki Dojo?
Well, it's awesome because it's a low stakes environment for Strong Machine J. I would assume that team is just not going to be on the back end of many shows. I think they're going to ease Strong Machine J back in. It's a shoulder injury, so you just, it's with him, that is always going to be a thing. I would rather him chill this Rey De Parejas. He obviously had such a big tournament last year, but I would have him chill and just work these openers. I think that match looks awesome. I think that the semi-main of Hyo and Jiro versus Shun and Homare, if Jiro was ever going to be worth anything, I think it would be in this match, crowd brawling with Shun.
Yeah, and I feel like with him, this is kind of the match you want him to have. With that, I mean, you have like an outsized heel presence in Shun to work off of. Homare, he's going to stick and move and pick his spots, really. So I do kind of feel like this maybe eases him into his block play a lot more than like doing like a Mochizuki Dojo opening round match,
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the main event, I mean, what else is there to be said? Yuki Yoshioka, he comes back and he's instantly in the semi-main and main event of his first two shows back, but against kind of the hot Dragongate tag team du jour, it does really kind of feel like you have positioned this card really well around the fact of, well, we will see the brand equity of Yuki Yoshioka over this weekend, I feel.
I can't wait. I'm really excited for him to get back. Like I always say, the last time that he wrestled on a Cork and Hall show, Eita was wrestling in a singles match on that show. So it's been a very, very long time since we've seen him. He's being thrown straight into the fire, big match on the first show, main event on the second show. But I also feel like if there was a more comfortable, I would call you a liar if you said there was a more comfortable landing spot than against Rita and Kame in a tag team tournament. So I think he will do just okay.
Yeah, and they keep with Yuki in the main event as we look on to Cork, and this is Tuesday the 4th. We will be doing a later recording next week, just schedules-wise. And so we will have this all covered for y'all next week. But we open with Benkei Mochizuki Jr. versus Mochizuki Dojo. I love it. Match one again right there. Madoka Kakuta versus Punch Tominaga. Well, they all can't be winners. And continuing along that theme, Royal Sambo Tokyo Travel Edition, Strong Machine J, KZ, UT, Jackie Kamei, Rita, Ryoya Tanaka, Luis Monte, Problem Dragon, Don Fuji, Toru Owashi in one of his last Cork and Hall appearances in Dragongate as a full-time wrestler, and Shuji Kondo. Match 4, your actually it won't be pre-intermission, they have 7 on this show. Ryo Fuda and Daiki Yanigiuchi versus Ishin Yoshiki Kato, building up the Kato and Daiki storyline. You have match 5, Paradox, Susumu Yokosuka, Kagetora, Naruki Doi versus Z-Brats, Shun Skywalker, Kai, and Homare. Semi-main event, Yamato and BB Hulk versus Hyo and Kurashio, Tokyo, Japan. And then your main event in Cork and Hall is Yuki Yoshioka and Dragon Dia versus Kota Minoura and Jason Lee. Boy, that has a lot of Masquerade lore going on there in that main event.
Again, really high-end position for Yoshioka, but I trust him in the ring with Jason Lee and, to some degree, Kota Minoura. So I have faith in that match, whereas the Jiro match against Yamato and Hulk sounds far, far less appealing. The good news is the undercard on this show, forget the Battle Royal, no interest in that, but the 2 Mochizuki Dojo matches, Ben and Jr. against Mochizuki and Sahara, and then the one that we've all been waiting for, as odd as that sounds, Fuda and Yanagiuchi versus Ishin and Kato. That could be one of the feel-good moments of the year. I cannot wait for that.
I just wish that, at least the way that they do their shows, this was match 5, and they moved that 6-man to before that, just so you have like that feel-good moment going into intermission.
Absolutely. Look, there's one result here, and it's Yanagiuchi pinning Kato, and I really hope they don't screw it up.
And with all the Z-Brats misfire lately, does definitely feel like you can make it a little bit of a dirty win, but it still has the effect, the desired effect.
Absolutely.
Should we talk about GLEAT version 16 case before we get out of here?
Give it to me real quick. Yeah, absolutely. Because I have not seen this show yet. You are the only person in the world to have watched it other than these 600 people that were in Corrigan Hall.
640 people in Corrigan Hall, which looked very much like 640 people in Corrigan Hall. Case, we actually have notebook matches in GLEAT this year.
Really?
I'm proud to announce to you. Yeah, that's the frustrating thing about the show. The undercard was a whole lot of nothing. They flew Leo Rush over to literally have a 6-minute match that was really bad because I don't think they got the whole, hey, it's a 2-count fall here over. They did not work with any sort of urgency. El Lindemann can only do so much. It was not good at all. A heatless disbands match. And then you had your second half of the card lead off of T-Hawk versus Katsuhiko Nakajima. Which case, T-Hawk. I don't know how T-Hawk is probably my favorite GLEAT wrestler right now. He was awesome in this. This was a real gritty, let's hit each other as hard as possible, and T-Hawk willing to play around with Nakajima's hubris. And you kind of had a bit of T-Hawk becoming babyface by proxy. Nakajima's presentation in this promotion is just utterly bizarre. You have someone who's still doing his dumb and Noki bit, but now it's to lesser and lesser crowds, so it loses all context and really it as a heel. Instead, he's just this awkward figure here. The G Infinity match we talked about, not a good performance from Takuma. Your main event, though, Ishida versus Takahiro Yamamura. I was 4 flat on it, Case. Ishida looks like an absolute killer. It's his best match, I feel like, since his last GRX run. And honestly, feel like that this is one of his better matches since leaving Dragongate, to be quite honest. They were doing crazy apron bumps. Yamamura, credit to him. This was a legwork match where he continually sold the leg. He wasn't able to really get up for the Stardust press 20 minutes after having a bad knee bump to the outside. Just like a great and strong match there. And that's the frustrating thing about GLEAT. You had 2 notebook matches in front of a crowd that was disinterested for basically everything else but that case. And your absolute goof of a president goes on Twitter and says, man, I wish Tokyo had 700 to 1,000 seat venues. My man, you need to make sure your ship is able to be on the seas before you care about when the tide is coming.
Yeah, not a good look. Not a good look.
Shima looked a little better.
Good. Well, he was in the presence of Magnum Tokyo. That tends to be his lucky charm.
Yeah, I just hope that Magu backstage, he looks at this and goes, you know what? Not my vibe. I'm just hoping. for someone who has been known, Case, throughout history, having a somewhat of a better business sense than others, one has to look at this promotion and go, hey, about it, and just disappear back until the next time. I guess Jiro wants him to come out and dance.
Yeah, exactly. It warms my cold dead heart to see any of these Dragon System guys make amends after years and years. So on one hand, it's nice seeing Magnum be back in the spotlight to any degree. I just hope that it ends with, hey, he did the dance once and now he's hanging out backstage with Shima. I'm good on anything else with him. Yeah,
and I just think that as someone who has been noted to not want to have people think of him as modern day Magnum, that he likes the fact that 99 through 2004 he was seen as this kind of thing. He doesn't want to lessen it after he came back once. I hope he kind of sticks to that.
Yeah, very much so.
But that was GLEAT version 16 case. I went through it in less than 4 minutes. It wasn't that painful.
No. It's I much would prefer you telling me about it than me actually watching it. So there you go.
Oh, and it looks like your boy is probably going to be next up after Simon Gotch to the Nakajima Killing Machine.
Which one is my boy?
Tetsuya Izuchi.
Oh, God. I mean, he was my boy 4 years ago. I don't know if I still claim that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. And, and as a last real note about GLEAT and their position here, this did 640. This is a promotion that less than a year ago was bringing in outsiders such as Kazuyuki Fujita, Kendo Kashin, and Masakatsu Funaki. Nowhere near this anymore. They did a disbands match with a unit that has 2, I wouldn't call them high-level indie presences in Masato Kamino and Yosuke Kadama. They were not on this show and have not been in this promotion for a long time. This does not feel like a healthy promotion. But we know that. We knew that. but it's even more apparent when you kind of look back at what they used to do.
They drew what they did in Corkin, putting together the best possible card they could, and I don't know where you go from there.
I mean, like, that's like the real thing. I mean, you look at how the company like now has even dropped even further from where they even looked 6 months ago going into the Explosion match, you know? Like,
yeah. I mean, look, it's the two demarcation points for this promotion's history is coming. Sorry, I just burped in the microphone. You can deal with that. The October 2021 Corkin where Ishida comes in, they felt like they were on the cusp of something kind of hot, and that's to this day the biggest house they've ever drawn in Corkin. Jun Kasai in the main event, and then the next Corkin they turned Ishida heel, and you felt the air come out of the room, and it went, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And then they had stayed at whatever that come down level was through last summer, and once they started doing the explosion stuff and it became, all right, fuck this.
Yeah, it just becomes like such a overwhelming presence. Like, not even looking like that. Like, it is just, you have that happen. Then you bring in Nakajima after all that thing, and he's just this part that's just completely adrift in this promotion that's trying to do too many things and does not do anything really that well.
Yeah, very much so.
But that was GLEAT version 16. It happened. We'll see how many versions we get out of that promotion. But Case, that's going to do it for us this week, unless you have anything else.
No, that'll do it.
So you should expect next week's episode Thursday into Friday. It's just how scheduling is working out. So just note that in your back of your minds when there's no show. Early next week, we'll be back talking about the doubleheader in Corkin. And also, I mean, the doubleheader in Osaka and the show in Corkin. It'll be a big week. But that's going to do it for this week on Open the Voice Gate. You could follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate, on Twitter. Case is at _ in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. If you would like to talk with us and talk with other great Dragongate fans, stop by the Voices of Wrestling Discord. We have an Open the Voice Gate channel that we post all of our show notes. And then whenever we have matches we talk about, we make sure that there is links to that there. But there's also the Dragongate channel there as well. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back with you next Friday. Take care, everyone.
Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for two Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.